If you look at the first 10 verses of the 20th chapter, this might be as far as we get tonight, the fifth event. 7, heaven. 6, the great white throne. 5, the millennium. When I think of the millennium, the first 10 verses, and by the way, there's a huge amount of those 2,040 verses that are about the millennium. The millennium is an amazing time when Jesus Christ literally rules on earth from Jerusalem, and the whole planet is under this amazing God reigning over them. And in fact, the details in Isaiah are amazing. If you don't come to the temple for the feast during the millennium, God won't He won't allow it to rain on your fields. A couple years of that, you come to the feast. You don't want to, because a lot of the people in the millennium are not believers. In fact, the majority of them are not believers, but they outwardly conform. You know what it teaches me, the millennium? You can have a perfect environment and still have rotten people. That would have saved America billions of dollars. This whole great society thing where we tried to knock all the buildings down and build new ones so everyone would get nicer to each other. No, a good surrounding does not make good people. You have to have an internal transformation, a heart transplant. So when I think of the millennium, I think be focused. Christ is the one that's going to perfect the earth. I don't have to clean up. I don't throw trash in the ground, dump my oil in the river, but also I'm not trying to save the earth because it's not savable. Christ is going to fix it. In the millennium, He's going to make it all new, and He's going to make it perfect, and it's going to be wonderful. I don't have to focus my life on trying to perfect the earth. But look at the millennium. For those of you from a background that always wondered about this, verse 1 of chapter 20, I saw an angel coming down from heaven, having the key to the bottomless pit. Remember, hell was created for the devil and his angels, and the devil is in this waiting room called the bottomless pit, and a great chain was in his hand, and he laid hold of the dragon, that serpent of old, who is the devil and Satan. And right there you see that the serpent of the Garden of Eden and all, the devil that tempted Christ, this is all the same person. This is Lucifer, the son of the morning. He lays a hold of him, and look what it says. He bound him for 1,000 years. And he cast him in the bottomless pit and shut him up and set a seal on him so that he should deceive the nations no more until the 1,000 years were finished. But after these things he must be released for a little while. And I saw thrones, and they that sat on them, and judgment was committed to them. And I saw the souls of those who had been beheaded for their witness in Jesus and for the word of God, who had not worshipped the beast or the image and had not received the mark. And these lived and reigned with Christ for 1,000 years. And the rest of the dead did not live again until the 1,000 years were finished. This is the first resurrection. And you notice the constant repetition of the words that I repeated real loudly? 1,000 years. That's where millennium comes from. It's over and over repeated that this is a specific, numerically numerated period of time, that it is 1,000 years. That's where millennium comes from. And this is one of the most talked about parts of the Bible, and yet there's a whole group of born-again Christians who are called millennialists. They say there is no millennium, even though that there are hundreds of verses describing it, and even though it says over and over that it's 1,000 years. God said, I am going to take the devil, I am going to chain him up, I'm going to put him in a pit, and I'm going to do this for 1,000 years. Did I mention I'm going to do it for 1,000 years? Did I mention that everybody's going to live for 1,000 years? And after a while you wonder, what does he mean if he doesn't mean 1,000 years? Do you know what the amillennialists say? They say the devil's chained now. Really? Long chain, right? He's pretty loose right now. I'm not sure what's going on, but not to make fun. But the best interpretation of the Bible is to take it for what the people that heard it thought it meant at that moment, the first canon interpretation. And if someone heard 1,000 years, 1,000 years, 1,000 years, 1,000 years, and 1,000 years, you know what they would probably think this was? 1,000 years, because that's what God said. And then verse 8, he's released 7, after the 1,000 years is expired, Satan will be released from his prison. So he's not in there now. He's going to be put in there. After he does havoc on the earth during the tribulation, he is confined to that place, that pit, for 1,000 years. But then he's released after the 1,000 years. In verse 8, he goes out to deceive the nations which are on the four corners of the earth. And like I talked about last week, Gog and Magog, to gather them together to battle, whose number is as the sand of the sea. And they went up from the breadth of the earth. They surrounded the camp of the saints and the beloved city. And fire came down from God out of heaven. There's no war. There's no confrontation. God just says, this is enough. And he incinerates them all and then resurrects them, and they stand as you read onward. You say, how do we get unsaved people in the millennium? Well, think about this, that the people that begin the millennium are, remember the sheep and the goats? The people that survive the tribulation, human beings that survive because God stops it, and there are believers, and they are called the sheep. And they are brought in and they begin the peopling of the millennium. And so those people that survived seem to all be believers. And they all start in the millennium. But you know what? They have children, and they continue. In fact, it says in Isaiah that if you die at the age of 100 during the millennium, you're considered a mere child. It appears that everybody lives for the whole 1,000 years because it's a perfect earth, perfect food, no pollution, no microwave, no cell phones giving you cancer, no smoking, and inhaling all that. It's all perfect. So you're living 1,000 years. But each generation has to make a choice. And believing parents have children, and they have children, and what we find is that God has no grandchildren. You're either a son or daughter. You're not a grandchild. You're not saved because your parents are, or vice versa. And each succeeding generation gets further away. They hear about it, but they don't respond until finally the majority of the people on the planet, as it says here, from the breadth of the earth, they come and surround, and God incinerates them. That's the end of the millennium. And we go into the great white throne, which we'd already covered. What does the millennium say? We should be focused. What does the great white throne say? We should be faithful. What does heaven say? We should be investing. Now, we only got through 3. We'll go through the next events next week, Lord willing.